There is a helpful book out there by Hulbeek, which categorizes all of the married saints and blesseds, and I use that as a starting point. There's about 140 married saints and blesseds out there, but what I discovered in researching that is that the lion's share of them happened to be married.
Yeah.
Right? It's not as if they were saints in or of and through marriage. It's that at one time or other they were married,
right.
and maybe after they were a widow, they founded a religious order or something, right?
Right?
So really the challenge was finding saints whose marriage, the daily life of marriage is what made them holy, right? And so there's been an increase in beatifications and canonizations of those kind of people in the last 100 years.
Welcome to Tulsa Time with Bishop Konderla. I'm Adam Minahan. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and for giving us some positive feedback on social media on some of the episodes we've done recently. We had a lady by the name of Carol giving us a shout out on Twitter saying how much she really appreciated the podcast and hearing from you, Bishop, and getting a chance. She says she lives out in the rural areas, and so being able to hear you on a regular basis was a huge benefit. So,
and if I was on Twitter, I would have seen that probably.
Yeah, but I check it for you, so no worries. But yeah, it's great to have you back. You were recently kind of on a little bit of a vacation, right?
Yeah, I went out to see our cabin. The two dioceses together own a cabin in Crested Butte, Colorado, that was willed to the Diocese of Oklahoma and Tulsa when it was all one diocese by a group of priests who had set it up over their lives as a getaway place. And when the last of them died, they willed it over to the diocese. And so the priests of the diocese, the bishops, and the chancery personnel can all reserve dates to spend some days in that cabin. So I've been here 7 years, and I'd never seen it, so I thought I'd better go and see what we have out there. It's very nice. I mean, as you would expect in Crested Butte, Colorado. So.
Well, and you're getting away from the Oklahoma heat for a little bit. Now's the time to go.
Yeah, though, when I got back, it was that morning that we had that was in the low 70s. It was very nice when I got back.
Yeah.
But it's already 93 or something out there today, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have a special guest with us today. It's great to have you. You're part of the Faith Formation Conference that we're going to be hosting here in the diocese. You're going to be giving a presentation. Dr. Kent Lasnoski from Wyoming College.
Yeah, Wyoming Catholic College, a little startup college in Wyoming, the only four-year college other than University of Wyoming in that state.
Yeah, they're the Cowboys. The Wyoming is Cowboys, correct?
Yes, it is the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And how old is the school now?
School was started back in 2007.
Okay.
You had a couple of years before they had students. And so, yeah, very young still.
Yep.
And really coming into our own, though. We're at an exciting place right now.
And I seem to recall at least advertisements that had students on horseback heading out or something.
Yeah, one of my favorite pictures is a student sitting on a horseback backwards reading Euclid. Yeah, it's genius. I mean, the students get a lot of time on the horses, and they're free to ride them whenever they want. They'll have a horsemanship class.
They offer that. Yeah.
And right now, the freshmen are all out on their 21-day trip as a way of orientation to the school. So
21-day trip on horses.
Well, the horses bring out re-rations, but they are simply hiking for 21 days.
21-day hike.
Yeah.
Wow. How about that?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
1 week of it is entirely on their own. So
cool.
With the leaders have stepped away after training them in how to not die.
And so and are they allowed to bring any technology with them?
Oh, not at all. Certainly not on the outdoor trip, and of course on campus there are no cell phones either.
Yeah.
So
the PPF, the Program for Priestly Formation, has added what's called a propedeutic year now to seminary, and the propedeutic year is a recognition that this culture culture in the West, in the wealthy countries, and particularly if the young person is exposed a lot to social media and all of that, does not produce maturity in an individual in the same way that it used to, or at an early age as it used to. And so the propedeutic year is precisely kind of a novitiate in a way for diocesan seminarians, a year to be focusing on learning how to pray, how to simply be still without technology and all kinds of noise and input. And in our diocese here, we have our seminarians use a flip phone only for the first year or two in the seminary, and for the similar reason, you kind of need to detox.
Yeah, that's right.
From the dependency that we all develop with these screens and all. Now, this is all going out on one of these screens, so we're not saying it's bad necessarily, but it can be used in a way that is not useful.
Yeah, I think what we see is that so many people look to social media and other online sources for their value and their identity. And, the psychology of those dopamine hits, that you get when you see a new message or a new like or something on your post. And what we're trying to do is help the students find their identity in Christ.
Yeah.
And so you get them out there, you get them away from it, and they have to figure out who they are. And they have to figure out who their father is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I like that.
Yeah. Now, Kent, you are, I can call you Kent.
Sure.
Go for it. Okay. So I sort of say, maybe.
But don't call him Sue.
Yeah, or don't call him like to dinner. What is it?
That's for sure.
You're the author of 2 books, at least 2 that I know of. The one that I know of that I've read, actually, Vocation to Virtue, it's Christian Marriage as a Consecrated Life, put out by CUA. Here you go, right there. It's a really great book. I would recommend for all of the catechists or faith formation leaders in your area if you're looking to help, with marriage prep and things like that. It's more of a deep dive.
But also married couples, huh?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, if you're looking to really kind of, because it is a little bit more academic book, correct? Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more meaty.
Yeah, it is. I do some academic work to set up for the real pastoral piece of it, which is really, that final chapter 6, where I walk through some of the more practical elements of what it means to live marriage as a vocation,
Yep.
Mm-hmm. The other book that you were mentioning, 30 Days with the Married Saints, is really strictly down at that level of practice. It's a self-guided retreat for couples that flows from this first book in many ways. And that was really a co-author project with my wife. We had a great time doing that. It came out of a retreat that we offered for married couples. So also strongly suggest that one for folks just wanting to build their faith together by reflecting on the lives of the married saints.
But that one may be really useful for engaged couples.
Yeah, we had that in mind as well. And so I know a number of engaged couples who have used it and so with great success actually too.
Because that's, we've talked about that in this podcast. We had several episodes on proximate marriage preparation and getting people ready. It took us 2 or 3 episodes to get them past dating, to get them engaged.
Yep.
But that's one of the things that we were talking about was the difference between someone entering marriage because they believe God is calling them to be a spouse and a parent, versus someone who's entering marriage just because they happen to fall in love with someone, and that's what you do when you fall in love with someone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so a book like that 30-day book would help couples to better understand, what does it mean to say that I'm going to be called to marriage by God and live it out for that purpose.
Yeah.
We used the analogy with seminary formation. Okay, everybody seems to understand a call to celibate life, call to priesthood or religious life, and no one balks too much at the idea that, okay, and then we ask them to go to 7 to 9 years of formation to prepare for that sacrament, that vocation. But then and then we say marriage is an equivalent vocation, not a lesser vocation, a parallel vocation, and yet you can get married in 6 or 8 months. And so we assume the same, take 3 people. an engaged couple and a young man going into seminary. They're all 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's got 7 years ahead of him before he can do anything about the sacrament of the priesthood. They can get married in 8 to 10 months. There's something out of whack about that.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons people think that way is because the goods of marriage are so deeply ingrained into what's natural to man, right? Whereas the goods of the consecrated life and the goods of the priestly life seem in many ways to be, at least outwardly, a rejection of some of those natural goods in preference of the supernatural goods. But I think the key is that if we're going to be serious about calling marriage a vocation, if we really mean that, then we do have to get much more robust in the terms of how we ask people to prepare for that, right? As if they're really being sent on a mission that requires serious preparation. And so, one of the things I hypothesize is that maybe marriage prep should look a little bit more like a postulancy, a little bit more like a novitiate that involves mentorship, that involves training in certain virtues, and in particular, as strange as it sounds, virtues of poverty, chastity, and obedience that would be lived out in a particularly married way.
Fashion, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the dicastery for the family in Rome agrees with you. So they're Pope Francis has used the language of a novitiate for marriage, and they're talking about a catechumenate for marriage. And it sounds like it's looking like about an 18-month kind of a process. But I think what it will share with the catechumenate is markers. It's looking for markers along the way, not simply completing and signing a certificate, but looking for markers. Have you achieved this level of maturity? Do you have this level of an understanding of what marriage as a sacrament means? The whole issue of nullity declarations and petitions is based on the reality that consent is not as simple as just saying I do. Consent has to have a understanding behind the saying I do and an intention, and that's borne out in behavior or not. And so for couples to understand more deeply, I made this argument in an article on doing marriage preparation with cohabiting couples. The decision itself to cohabit, what I was arguing, is a demonstration that this couple doesn't yet possess the critical faculty, that's the canonical term, to give valid consent. Because if they did have that critical faculty, they would understand that to live together in this fashion, in a sexually active relationship that looks like marriage prior to being married, is a detriment to being married, to moving into marriage. And so,
Now, in your book, you pull from different married saints. Now, one of the things I think that's interesting, if you go back and look at the canonized saints, there's not a whole lot of married canonized saints. There's a whole lot of Franciscans and Benedictines and different orders and different popes throughout the history, but there's not a whole lot of married saints. How were you able to pull those together?
Yeah, there is a helpful book out there by Holbeek, which categorizes all of the married saints and blesseds, and I use that as a starting point. There's about 140 married saints and blesseds out there. But what I discovered in researching that is that the lion's share of them happened to be married.
Yeah.
Right? It's not as if they were saints in or of and through marriage. It's that at one time or other they were married.
Right.
And maybe after they were a widow, they founded a religious order or something.
Right.
So really the challenge was finding saints whose marriage, the daily life of marriage is what made them holy. Right. And so there's been an increase in beatifications and canonizations of those kind of people in the last 100 years. One of the most extraordinary for me and my wife as we were looking through this is the Quattrocis, and they Quattroci, Italian.
Okay.
Their full name is even longer than that. Like, you'll look it up. They had, their children even thought them to be saints while they were still alive. I mean, they had this motto of live life from the roof up, right? So everything was ordered up toward heaven in their lives. They never had a problem that they didn't order toward prayer, right? And they were put in front of a situation that was truly heroic, where Maria had placenta previa with, I think it was their fourth child. And at that time, during the 19th century, the version that she had was basically a death sentence. They gave her just a 5% chance of living, and they said, you need to abort this child. She said, no, we'll offer it up to prayer. And, by the miracle of God, she survived that.
Wow.
Right. And so truly put her life on the line for that child, a kind of radical pro-life witness, but just wonderful example of like the decisions of their married life, together. They were saints through that and in that, rather than just sort of around it.
Yeah.
You know.
And the Mola, right? What's her name?
Gianna Mola.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the younger couple, the also Italian couple, she had cancer of the eye or something. And
Not remembering their name off the top of my head. I mean, of course, the most famous is the Martins.
Yeah.
Right. And their life, if you look at it in detail, is full of profound suffering. I mean, here's a woman who had a number of her children simply die. And in fact, not even while she was with them, she was not able to nurse her own children. I mean, what a cross to bear. And so she had to send these children away to a nurse, and some of them died while they were even there at this nurse. So, and just the cross too of having imperfect children. You read through her diaries and the letters she wrote, and you see she struggled. I mean, Leonie was kicked out of school because of how bad she was as a child. So for all those parents who are struggling to raise up their kids and dealing with the questions of what am I supposed to do with this child's imperfect behavior? I mean, go read the story of a family about Zaley Martin, and you'll find a lot of hope there.
So there is hope. All right.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Right.
Good deal. So you're a father of 10. I didn't mention this, but you're a father of 10.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how you found time to write a book with your wife, but more power to you on that. What do you suggest to those guys, so that people who are looking to incorporate prayer more into their marriage with a busy life, a chaotic life? How do you incorporate prayer into your marriage?
Yeah, it's basically, you have to be intentional. You can't win the Super Bowl by accident, right? Nothing worth doing generally happens by accident. So you need to just say, look, this is something we're going to do. We're going to structure this into our lives, and we're going to make it happen, because you won't just find time for it. You have to make the time for it. You have to make it the center of gravity around which the other things orbit, right? You can't just make it another planet in the constellation. So what I would say there, the real short answer is, create a kind of rule of life for your family. Get serious about it, and don't start too big, right? But just say, look, every day, before we let those kids run out to school, we're going to do an Our Father, a Hail Mary, a Glory Be, and particular intentions for that day. And we're going to throw a little a morning offering at it too. Join ourselves to the Mass, make a spiritual communion if we can't go to Mass, that kind of thing. So choose something to structure into your day.
And that's only that's 5 to 8 minutes. 5 to 8 minute deal.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can go as big as you want. You could do the full liturgy of the hours if you want with your family. You could do a rosary every day, but you got to start doing something.
Right.
Just make that commitment to structure your life around this pole. This element is the thing that doesn't budge. Right. And once you make that commitment, you'll find that you start finding more opportunities to pray, and it'll expand. But start small and commit to something that you can actually achieve.
And again, the value of knowing this going in other words, this being part of what we talk about when we're engaged, part of our dreaming about what our family might be like one day, all of that before we ever get married. For one thing, to make sure that we're compatible and on the same page with having even this plan. And secondly, so that we start with the children from the ground up. It's harder to do this if you've already got teenagers who are kind of rambunctious and normal,
Mhm.
and then you suddenly announce we're going to do this.
Yeah.
That's harder to do than if you've got children for whom this has been part of their life since they were born. They come to know it, expect it. They don't think anything of it.
Yeah, for engaged couples, there should certainly be times of prayer that they spend together each day. Maybe make a couple, at least one daily mass together a week, that they commit to. Also, they should come up with doing the same kind of spiritual reading. Choose Jacques Philippe, and read through one of his small books together, and just always have something that you're trying to be on the same page about.
Yeah.
Because in marriage, you're really writing a story together,
Yeah.
right? That God is ultimately the author of, but you are there as co-authors with God. And if you're not thinking the same things, reading the same things, praying the same things, it's going to be hard to be on the same page. And that needs to start really at the very latest during engagement.
Yeah.
Really.
I have said before in doing work with couples that the intimacy involved in a prayer life, a common prayer life together, is deeper even than the intimacy involved in the physical relationship. Because there I have to share my most innermost self and my most innermost relationship with God with you, and hear your thoughts about me, and also you receive my thoughts about you. I have a hobby as a woodworker, and a pastor once asked me, he was a Baptist supervisor, my supervisor in hospital ministry. He asked me to make a gift for his daughter who was getting married, and the gift he wanted me to make was a kneeler, a 2-person kneeler that they were going to, pray-do, that they were going to have at the foot of their bed. And I thought, boy, what a perfect gift, because it is the tool that we'll use to develop the very thing that will become the heart and soul of the relationship.
Yeah. And as you mentioned that, I'm starting to think about geography of home, right? And what I mean by that is the way your home is a place, and the way it's designed as a place affects how you live there. So if you have a kneeler somewhere central, it might get used. But I think more important, if you were asking about how do I get prayer more in the home, what's a practical step you could take? Get rid of your TV. Just get rid of it. Throw it in the garbage. And the reason I say that is because where the TV is seems to become a sort of center of gravity, and it almost starts acting and looking like an altar, right? That everything is surrounded by this altar. We all come and sit before the TV, right, in front of it, and give it our attention, where, Simone Weil has called prayer attentiveness, right? And so if we recreate the geography of our home to be around a shrine, right? Maybe a place where you have some icons and a crucifix, some candles, maybe get some incense going there occasionally, right? You have designed your home to be ordered toward gathering for prayer rather than gathered for consumption of media, right? And that's a real concrete step that a father or mother could take and just kind of own this thing.
Yeah. The one of the episodes we were talking about an idea that I've shared with people over the years in terms of our screens and all as tools. In my shop, I have a whole collection of different kinds of hammers, but I never have gone into my shop and picked up a hammer and then walked around the house looking for something to hit. I only ever go and pick up a hammer when I already have in my mind a job that needs a hammer to do it. Then I go do the job, then I go put the hammer back, and so the hammer doesn't become a form of wasting time or entertainment. And so that's what I think of TVs, and so it fits well with this image you're talking about, geography. The TV is a tool. You could use it in very effective ways. You could watch podcasts of Tulsa Time on it, for example. But it's a tool, and it shouldn't be just passive. The family needs to have an idea of what we need to do in front of this tool right now, because we're going to watch a movie on Zaley Martin, or we're going to watch The Chosen, or whatever. And then when that's done, we don't need to sit here anymore. We can go back in our family room that has our shrine, read our books, have conversation together, pray, whatever it is. Yeah, so I like that. In monasteries, the pews are arranged facing each other.
Yes.
And so they're arranged that way so that the prayer can be antiphonal, back and forth, back and forth. And so there's even a geography, right, of that.
I find that very interesting that the pray to at the foot of the bed, like Haley and I have one. That's actually one of the first things that I did in our marriage is I built one out of cedar, and I put it at the foot of the bed, not really thinking about the impact it was actually going to have until later on, because it's another visible sign of something that we should be doing together, right? It's like we have to bypass that before we go to bed every night. And so it gives us something that we have to, it's like, oh, no, wait, we have to go pray together before we get into bed. And then also like just the beauty of, the marriage bed is the place where you lay down your life for one another. And here you are, you're praying before, the place in which you lay down your life for one another.
Call it the Tobit bench.
The toe, there's a real beauty to that in the master bedroom. But I think that it's so important before we actually have this family time prayer that we really have a couple have prayer together.
And I think that's what I was going to. That's something I wanted to add too. If you've heard of the soul of the apostolate, real. A classic there in spirituality. And one of the main things emphasized, of course, is unless you have that deep relationship with Christ and fire of the Holy Spirit burning within you, you can forget any active ministry you're going to want to try and do. And so as a married couple, unless I have that interior life, richly alive, and unless my spouse and I are praying together and strategizing together about our life in Christ, no matter what we try to do with the children, it's all going to fall flat.
Yeah.
Really.
The very virtues that you need to say I'm sorry or to, do whatever hard thing or even have a hard conversation, whatever, all those virtues are found there, in the prayer. So without that, we're struggling because we're on the struggle bus because we don't have. Now, the other thing, we have a parish here that Christ the King that uses a tagline, take the next step. And in that tagline, what they're trying to communicate is that for every person in the parish, no matter where you are in your walk with the Lord, there is some next step for you that will deepen your life with Him. What for you is the next step? And then the parish tries to provide all kinds of different steps that people can do. And so a married couple could each be thinking, what for me is my next step? Or they could be talking together, what for us as a couple is our next step? I would contend that's a much more intimate reality and conversation.
Yeah, and I think, couples, this again, we get back to the idea of structuring and a rule of life. I think one of the things Kate and I have tried to do with more or less success throughout the years is carve out a time where we can talk about those particular issues, because otherwise, you get wrapped up simply talking in what's the baseball schedule, what's the soccer schedule, how's Johnny doing in biology class, right? And you never get down to the deeper questions of, what have you been afraid of recently, or what's been struggling on your heart, and what is our next step? What's my next step? So again, structure. A lot of people are afraid of structure because they think it gets rid of spontaneity, but I can guarantee the more you structure, the more free you are to then actually be spontaneous when the time is right.
I can go into my shop on a whim and work on almost anything because I've built it, I've organized it, I've supplied it with the tools. So it's all that organized work that made the spontaneity possible. In my own family, there's the apocryphal story from my parents' early years. Dad comes home from work one day. Mom has 2 babies already and is pregnant with the 3rd. And she's standing at the stove, and Dad walks in and asks innocently, "Honey, what's for supper?"
Ooh.
And a pot flies across the kitchen.
Yeah.
And she says, "We're going out." But from then on, they made it a point, hiring babysitters to do it through the years, to have at least one evening by themselves, just that go out for a cup of coffee, talk together about what's going on. And as we got old enough, us older kids got old enough to do the babysitting, they occasionally would go and get a hotel room in town
Interesting.
and leave us alone at the house to babysit the kids. And they would come and visit us during the day
Yeah, that's funny.
and then spend the nights away from us
Yeah.
and bring buckets of chicken,
Hey.
Kentucky
Yeah.
Fried Chicken. And again, it was important to them. They recognized that we have to take care of our relationship, because if anything happens to that, then whatever we try to do for the kids is going to suffer.
Mhm. Yeah, it reminds me of, again, Quattrochi and also the Martins. Both couples were daily communicants, and in particular, the Quattrochi family, he and she would not greet each other with a kiss until after Mass. That was sort of the official beginning of their day, was the fact that they would, get up and go to this daily Mass together and then greet each other with a holy kiss after Mass. And
Yeah.
it's wonderful that they took the time out to actually do that and make that witness to them, to themselves, to each other, and to their family about what was really at the center of their lives.
And I've said in various settings here that for parents to be doing these things and then also talking to the kids about these things and about why we do these things, that we do these things and why we do these things. Beginning with just the pray-do. Your kids know there's a pray-do in there.
Yeah.
Oh, mom and dad have a pray-do. They must kneel together and pray together.
Mm-hmm.
That's a normal part of their thinking now.
Right.
It will not seem anything unusual at all to them to believe that married couples pray together. That's what they do.
And they're imitators, right? So one of the things that we got them for Christmas last year, because they were like, they wanted a place to pray. They wanted a kneeler. So we got them a kneeler, and so now they have a kneeler upstairs for them. So that way, like when they get out of bed, like that's what they do, is they get out and they start with prayer. But they're imitators, right? So one of the things that we have to remember is that while saints are like, sometimes we have this glorious, like amazing imagination about who these saints are. Part of the time is just like, you need to desire it. That's how do you become a saint? You desire it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the ordinary things.
Yeah.
The saints are not, I don't know if there's any saints who set out to be saint. They said, I'm going to be a saint, and they set out to be a saint. They set out to be faithful to God. They set out to be faithful to their vocation. They set out to strive after perfection. That's the monastic, making life perfect. And then God took care of the rest of it just by their being faithful to these smaller things, these ordinary daily things. Because, you don't want to become scrupulous about all of it. In the midst of it all. It's free. I've used the image of chocolate cake. I love chocolate cake. If I don't get to eat chocolate cake, if some opportunity arises that I have to pass up and I don't get to eat it, I'm going to be sad. But I'm not going to feel like I committed a sin. And so the same with all of these things that we're talking about. These are wonderful bon mots, to share with the God who loves us and who we love. And if we miss one on a particular occasion for some reason, well, it's too bad, because it's a wonderful thing. But it's not something that we need to go and make a confession about and all of that. So
I love how you're talking about how like you start small. Like at the beginning of this episode, even you were talking about like just start something small, right? It's like do the things that you're already doing in your day-to-day life, and oriented around God. So have that as the focal point. Like my dad, whenever he walked in from work, before he said hello to his children, he went straight to my mom to give her a kiss.
Yep.
And that's a very easy thing to do, and it doesn't take any more effort, than what you're already doing. But what it told us as kids is like, oh, well, dad loves mom. Mm-hmm. Mom loves dad.
Yeah.
And you're just reinforcing that. So, I mean, I loved your advice on like, just do small things.
Yeah. And I think another small thing you can do, especially if you have small children, is get in the habit, if you're a father, of making the last interaction you have with those children something that demonstrates your unconditional love for them, something like a blessing, right? Use that paternal right to give them, to call down or ask God to bless them. And so that habit is very easy. You can do a prayer with them, some kind of thing that shows them, what you really want for them is the presence of God. You know? And it doesn't have to be long. You don't have to be sophisticated, but just making that something that they know through habit every night. The thing I'm going to get from my parents is this demonstration of their love for me and their desire that God would be with me. Pretty easy. Takes like 5 seconds for each kid.
Right.
You know?
That's a normal thing in, say, the Hispanic culture, is parents blessing kids as they leave the house, as they come home. It's in the book of blessings. There are blessings for parents, for their children in the book of blessings. Going back to that monastic image, after Compline, at a couple of monasteries that I know of, the abbot stands at a certain spot near the stalls where the monks are, and as they file by him, he sprinkles them all with holy water.
Wow.
He gives each one a sprinkle of holy water. A father could do that with kids. They would even think it was funny.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, we had a bunch of Lourdes water that my kids would always ask, that they could have sprinkled on them. And recently, the godmother of my daughter Faustina gave us some holy oil. And out of one of my other girls had a little cut on her foot. And Faustina's like, I've got the holy oil. Let's go get it. She's putting it on there. It was awesome, just to see the way that they're doing that, because they want the sacramentals. They want the power of that grace and their beautiful childlike simplicity about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of overall, remind us again what the book is called. How can they get it? What are your last thoughts on those on the book?
Sure. So, the first one that's more academic, Vocation to Virtue, that's in a paperback from Catholic University of America Press. You can get that on the internet, Amazon. The second one that's more approachable for just anybody, not an academic level of reading, but is that self-guided retreat, is 30 Days with the Married Saints. And that's from Pauline Books and Media. Again, available on Amazon or anywhere else that sells books online. Pretty good price there. And yeah, recommend anybody that's interested to give that. It's a great marriage or wedding gift, or even a gift for someone you know has just been engaged.
It'd be a great gift for parishes to give to engaged couples.
Yeah.
As they start their marriage preparation.
Yeah, we thought about trying to kind of get a hold of parishes to try and work it into, marriage prep programs as well. I think it'd be wonderful.
Yeah. Or when we have those, what do we call our marriage day?
Marriage encounters?
No, the one when they come from Houston, the Pope Paul.
Together in Holiness.
Together in Holiness days. Yeah, that'd be a great thing to give out.
Another thing too, as you were mentioning, is this idea of post-marriage formation, right? Or formation after marriage. It's really important. We in marriage formation or pre-canon, we tell people, well, don't use contraception, and there's no such thing as divorce, and okay, go have a nice marriage now, right? But we don't give them tools to actually live that marriage. So again, if a priest were to give a book like this to a couple and say, hey, just try this, I guarantee, within 30 days, you're going to have a number of new practices that will help you be happy and holy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Kent, man, it's been great to have you on the podcast. I appreciate you guys, you taking the time to hang out with us and talk about prayer and marriage and our favorite topic, Jesus. That's I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Tulsa Time with Bishop Konderla. We'll see you guys next week.